I appreciate that, Elias. All right. So with that, we have a quorum. Welcome everyone to today's May 9th meeting of the SBCCGO Transportation Committee. I think we have many of the usual suspects. We can go through the room. Bill Stracker, I see you. Welcome. Dana Pinn, Diana Maya, Eric Lee, Jill Crump. I don't want to belabor this. We're going to have a lot of things to go through, and I think the last one is going to take, our last item is going to take quite a bit of time. So I'll just do a blanket welcome. Now that we're slightly after, David, can you confirm the posting of the agenda?
It has been posted.
There we go. I duly skipped that the last two meetings as a Brown Act violator. Please do not sue me.
We just have not included that as a specific item, but it's always been posted. So,
well, you should know, David, I write it in.
Okay,
Online,
perfect.
Do we have anyone here for public comment?
I did not receive anything in advance, and I see no hands.
Very well, moving on. We have the consent calendar with two main items, the minutes and the transportation reports. Do we have anyone who'd like to pull either item? And with that, would anyone like to move approval of the consent calendar?
Move to approve. Olivia.
Second, Lily.
Lily? We do a reverse roll call on this. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the consent calendar is approved. Moving on, we will go to updates from our working groups. Infrastructure Working Group. Ted, would you like to present on this?
He wasn't here yet.
I'm just going to introduce. So good morning, Ted Saman, Public Works Director for the City of Redondo Beach. Our next meeting is this Wednesday, and I was out at the last meeting for personal matters, so I would defer to David or Steve to give you an update on what happened.
Yeah,
And I asked David to do it, so.
So big things at the last meeting was a presentation from LA County Public Works on a pedestrian ITS app that they're piloting in El Camino Village. It allows folks to download an app on their phone that for pretty much for visually impaired folks to be able to safely cross at a series of intersections. It's got some advanced cameras, that sort of stuff. It was an interesting project. And then the second presentation was from Econolite on their priority solution, signal control priority system for traffic signals. That it's a more advanced way of providing priority to certain types of vehicles. And they kind of give
Emergency vehicles and transit vehicles.
Right, to make sure that they're not stuck in red lights, that sort of stuff. We've got both of the presentations linked on our website that if anybody wants those links, I can send them to you. Besides that, just our normal updates.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing David? Mine came through a bit choppy.
Nope, heard him through the whole thing. Thank you, David.
No problem.
Yeah. That
Very
was
well.
fun.
I'll get the tinfoil off of my iPad. David, question: where is that pilot for the Econolite? Where is that being held?
So the pilot is actually the LA County Public Works project in El Camino Village, right around the El Camino College area.
Very well. Anything else on Infrastructure Working Group? All right, transit operators. Dana, would you like to present on this?
Sure, real quick. Our meeting was held on Thursday, May 5th. And aside from our normal discussions, our normal updates, we had a conversation about the Crenshaw Line operating plan, and also some updates on the Green Line extension to Torrance and the Metro next gen data sharing, where Metro's made some data available to us to be able to use anytime we're doing any kind of reports. We now have access to some of that data. So that was really great. Otherwise, everything else standard.
Delighted to hear the Green Line was a subject matter. It is topical. And Metro Service Council, Don, would you like to present on this?
Yes, good morning. Our meeting is actually coming up on Friday. I reported on last month's meeting last month. And I will acknowledge that we had a second budget session just for Service Council members, very extensive, covering many of the priorities that this budget is going to address. And I can tell you for certain, I asked, and we are assured that there's money in there for the ongoing evaluation of the extension of the green line.
And that's the Metro 22-23 fiscal year budget.
That's correct. That's the one that they're starting to consider. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? All right, for the next piece, we're going to present, I think, David, you'll be presenting this on the local travel network, something that I know has made a whirlwind series of presentations at council meetings and was just here in El Segundo last Tuesday. David, am I correct? Is that yours to present? Nope, you're on mute, David.
Yep, I can present on that one. So we're moving forward with implementation on our two phase one corridors. We have a beach cities corridor, which includes the cities of El Segundo, Manhattan, Hermosa, Redondo, and then an inland corridor containing Gardena, Hawthorne, and Lawndale. We are working, we actually had a meeting with Assembly Member Marisucci to give him a briefing on the project. He was very excited about it. We are, like you mentioned, we just presented at El Segundo and received support from the council on moving forward with phase one in their city. We're going to continue working with staff to refine the routes and hopefully get a Measure M project application prepared by staff. We are working to negotiate a contract for technical consulting services for the RFP for wayfinding and signage. Let's see, any other stakeholder opportunities in those pilot cities, feel free to send them my way. We're working with councils, commission, city staff at the moment. We will be going to Gardena Chambers holding a EV event on May 21st in the afternoon. We'll be exhibiting there. Let's see, what else? Oh, we're exploring some ATP Cycle 6, I think we're on now, grant opportunities that might help with some of the what we're calling phase 2 LTN, which will either be the other cities or some of the more infrastructure heavy improvements, like connecting El Segundo to the South Bay. We think those ATP planning grants might be able to help us get started on that. So,
and the ATP grant is the active transportation program at the state level.
Correct.
So we're looking to see if we can find some state funds to do some active transportation planning.
Right. And I believe that's it.
David, I have a question. Are you going to be looking to come to all of the city councils? Because if so, I can schedule you for hours.
Yeah, we would love to. I know we were already there once a while ago, but we'd be happy to come back to Hawthorne again and give you guys an update and ask for support to move forward with your staff.
All right, we'll make arrangements for that.
Okay, I'll connect with you afterwards.
Okay.
Any other questions for David?
Yeah, David, I know that you presented and staff presented the local travel network to the office some time ago. Remind me, are unincorporated areas part of the LTN?
Yes, they are. We haven't classified them as one of our first phases, but if you would like us to consider them as part of phase one, we can connect with you afterwards and see where, like the inland corridor, that one with Gardena, Hawthorne, Lawndale, there's probably some areas that connect with your with SD2 over there. So we'd be happy to explore that in detail.
Yeah, if I could
Athens,
just
Westmont,
request
what are those?
Sorry, Steve, I missed that.
Oh, is Athens, Westmont, some of those unincorporated spots?
Yeah, that are across the street from phase 1 and 2 areas. So if I could just ask to follow up afterwards,
Sure.
maybe brief discussion. Great, thanks.
And John, before I go to you, I want just in addition to Lily's question, we had asked in El Segundo, because we try to be very aggressive in asking for federal funding whenever something looks like it's going to fall out of the sky to get some of our long-term pieces in it. So we had asked about flipping phase 2 and phase 1 as it applies to El Segundo, which is obviously requires funding because it's more infrastructure heavy. But I bring that up because Lily, part of phase 2 is we do have a corridor that touches on our unincorporated border along aviation that, although it doesn't link to them, it comes within, you know, a 9-iron of linking to them and could tie them in via Douglas to Manhattan Beach and the greater corridor. So those are things that we are mindful of as well. John, to your question.
Thank you, Chris. So last Tuesday, our council, without David being there, we did approve to support the measure for local transportation. And I know our city is not necessarily on the map when it comes to local transportation, but I think there'd be an opportunity along Western, certainly where we share with the city of San Pedro or Los Angeles, to be able to look for alternative type of vehicles, electric vehicles, to access many of the commercial corridor along Western to the residential. So I ask that our group continue to find ways to include the peninsula when it comes to the local transportation network as well.
Certainly.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, with that, is there anything else further on local travel? I want to make sure that John has 2 golf carts, one that can go down the hill and then the
One
fresh
that
one.
make it up the hill.
Up the hill.
Charger, both at the top and bottom. Thank you, Chris.
That's right. It comes with a reindeer. Steve, I'm going to go over to you. We have Measure M, MSP Annual Program Update.
Right. This
is an attachment C in your packets. Steve, will you be presenting on this?
Yeah, I'll do this one.
Okay, very well.
In February, we turned into Metro our annual Metro budget request, we call it. And we got a request on May 4th from the city of Palos Verdes Estates asking for construction funds for their project on Palos Verdes Drive West on that corridor. We had previously given them or approved $667,000 for the environmental and final design of the project. And the council approved the preferred alternative in March. So they now are back for the approval to go forward with construction. They expect that to begin, if they get this approval, in March 2023, less than a year from now. If we don't give this to them, we had checked with Metro, and Metro still hasn't processed our request. So it's timely for us to add this, to amend our request, to add it in this cycle. Otherwise, the city would have to wait for the next cycle, which starts in September and wouldn't get approved till next February, which would delay their project. And so we have the funds available in the fiscal year that they need it. We have approval or agreement with Metro to allow us to amend this request. So what we're asking today is that the COG board and this committee approve the amendment of the Measure M program to program $4.84 million for this Palos Verdes Estates project. And they have both an Exhibit 1 is their letter requesting the funds, and in the agenda packet, Exhibit 2 is a description by Michael Baker, their consultant, of the project itself.
And Tim is also on the line if there's any other specific
Tim
questions.
Johnson. Tim Johnson, is it?
It's Jonason. Good morning, everyone.
There you are, right. So do you want to add anything to my?
No, I think you covered it. I am their city engineer and helped with Michael Baker to put the application together. Really appreciate South Bay City COG's endorsement on the project. It's a very important project, let's put it that way, to the city. It's right next to their city hall. And so they're really looking forward to getting this project underway. So hopefully the COG can support our application and we can get working with Metro.
Tim, I'm going to turn the floor over to 2 questions here in a minute, but can you just retouch on us about what the deadline issue was?
Oh, I can. We typically require the cities to turn in these requests for projects in the September to December timeframe. So we can act on our Metro budget request by the end of February. We got this request in May, and Metro usually approves these kinds of annual requests sometime after July 1 for the fiscal year. So there's time between now, between the February date when we submitted the package to amend that package by including this project. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to get it into the current one that we approved in February as an amendment, instead of having to wait a whole year to go to construction when they'll be ready to go before then.
Understood. Okay, it's an administrative guideline, not a deadline. Understood. Okay, Lily, you have your hand up. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. And my question was similar. I guess follow-up question from the chair is what justifies the amendment in this case? And I'm totally clear, Steve, that our guidelines are guidelines, right, for deadlines, but what would be prohibitive of another city saying, hey, wait, can we add? I'm just trying to figure out process-wise why we're making an exception in this case.
The COG historically has been responsive to cities, especially if they come in within a deadline that is manageable for Metro. So it's strictly that the city made the request on May 4th. And we try to accommodate all of our cities when they come in this way. It's not a precedent. And so we've had other years where we've added additional projects after the February deadline. So this is just consistent with prior policy.
I'll just add that if we were to push it off, it would end up delaying the project 6 months or so. So when we have the ability to amend the existing budget request and process to accommodate a request like this and not further delay a project, we try and do that. So.
And we also have to check that we have the funds available in that fiscal year to be able to add a project, which in this case we do. So there's nothing to directly answer your question. Other cities may choose to come in because they've just realized there was an opportunity, but we take them one by one in the time frame that they're requested. But it's always it would have to come back to our board as a formal amendment.
Thank you. John, looking refreshed from riding your bike up the hill. The floor is
Yeah,
yours.
no, I was actually on the reindeer. Thanks, Chris. So anyhow, no, I'm in support of this, and I will say, being in Rancho Palos Verdes, that there is quite a bit of traffic that does head up the coastline between San Pedro and Redondo Beach. Many of us that have driven in this corridor know that this is a terrible, terrible traffic situation they have in Palos Verdes Estates. So I guess the question is, Mr. Chair, are we making a recommendation at this point, or is this just a receive and file?
No, this is a recommendation to the board to amend the program that we submitted in February.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, we will do a reverse roll call vote. Do we have anyone opposed to the recommendation, making this recommendation to the board to amend our program amend our program? Do we have any abstentions? It is passed. We will make a recommendation to the board to amend the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right, next up, and running slightly ahead of schedule for our Green Line Donnybrook, we have the Caltrains District 7 update. I think, did I see Sergio on here? Let me scroll over.
He had reached out just before the meeting, and they had some deadlines that they were working on, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it. I don't see him.
Do you have a delegate that can give us the update, or?
No, I think it was kind of an all hands on deck thing. I don't see any Caltrans reps.
All right, well, we will, without objection, let's administratively move that toward the end right after the 3-month look ahead. If they can join, we'll reinsert them.
And I can
and that will get us done.
And I can send out anything he shares at Wednesday's IWG meeting with the committee afterwards too.
Okay, very well, David. All right, that moves us slightly ahead of schedule to our Metro staff recommendation for the operating plan on the Crenshaw LAX line. And before I turn it over to them, I want to make clear that sometimes the newest terminology that Metro may use to designate and define these lines, some of us are a bit dated. As you've probably heard, we will talk in greens, blues, silvers, and golds. So please feel free to, in the spirit of talk to us like we're five, when you do talk about different lines, make sure we specify where those junctions are, because some of us will be a bit behind. I know that was something that 2 months ago, we spent the first few questions making sure we agreed on nomenclature, and not in a divisive way, just making sure we're all talking about the same thing. So with that, David, who will present on this for Metro?
We've got Joe on the line. Joe, you here? There.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
And Joseph, do you prefer Joe or Joseph? So we don't.
Yeah, Joe is fine.
Joe it is.
Yep.
Joe, welcome to the transportation meeting. The floor is yours and I will warn you that there's strong feelings. So, but I'm sure you've heard it all before. So Joe, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you everyone and good morning. So again, I'm Joe Forgerini with Metro's Service Development Team. Happy to be here with your committee this morning just to update you on the latest information on our potential relook at the operating plan for Crenshaw LAX as it integrates with the rest of the Metro Rail network. I'm going to attempt to share my screen in the hope of giving you a PowerPoint presentation on this. It's only a short one. Again, bear with me for a couple more secs and just let me know if you're seeing a screen with some green and yellow.
Joe, we've got it. It's in presenter mode. We can see your slides on the side. There we go. Now it's presentation mode. So the notes that you have that are mostly about David are hidden.
Okay. So let's jump straight in and give you the latest. So just as a reminder, back in 2018, the later part of 2018, Metro's board did adopt a one-year pilot for what was known as the C3 alternative, which was as follows. It was to basically create a pattern of operation from Norwalk to the junction at Aviation LAX following the existing Green Line, and then continue north on the Crenshaw Expo alignment. And that's illustrated there on that right-hand panel in orange. And then a second operating pattern would be run from Willowbrook Rosa Park Station on the existing Sea Line Green, and would follow the existing Sea Line Green around to Redondo Beach, the existing terminus today. So again, that was what the Metro board adopted as a one-year pilot back in, I believe it was November of 2018. So really why we are choosing to bring up this issue again now for a review of that original decision, there are about 4 different categories. One relates to project sequencing, and I think this is really the triggering one that really brought this to the forefront for us as staff. There are also other factors such as operational impacts, regional travel patterns, and the next gen bus plan. And then finally, our future rail plans, which may also play into any update for the operating plan. So again, last month, we did revisit with Metro's board. And again, I never got to present this PowerPoint. So they actually went on consent, both at committee and at board. So you're the lucky recipients, I guess, to actually receive the PowerPoint. So again, talking about the project sequencing, we are going to open, the Crenshaw line, at least the segment from Westchester Veterans, just north of the LAX area, up to the Expo line. Hopefully, the late summer, early fall of this year. We are hopeful of meeting that goal. We've already taken acceptance of the substantial completion of the Crenshaw line, with the exception of the tunnel section north from Hyde Park. So that remains still to be taken, and hopefully later this month that substantial completion will be achieved. So we'll open that initial segment, so we won't have to deal with the integration with the Sea Line Green until a later stage, which we estimate will be somewhere in the vicinity of 14 months after we kick off the segment from Westchester Veterans up to the Expo line. The reason for that is we're trying to get the AMC, the Airport Metro Connector Station, where the metro line will interface with the people mover for LAX. We're trying to get that station to a state of at least initial platform completion so that we're able to run trains through that property, hopefully in the later part of fall of 2023. And at that point is really the key point where we would integrate the operation of Crenshaw LAX line with the Sea Line Green. So that's really the pivotal moment. Now, when the board took their action back in 2018, the AMC really was not a well-defined, fully approved project at that time, and there was expected to be, a completion of Crenshaw line around the end of 2019, about a year after the board took their motion. At that time, we know that hasn't come to play. We're about 3 years behind that schedule, but at the time they took that decision, they anticipated opening Crenshaw later part of 2019, and AMC wouldn't have been around for another 3 to 4 years later. So again, there was plenty of time then to run that 1 year pilot, react to it, take the results from it, come back to the board, seek another decision. Now we're faced with this 14-month gap where we really would have no time to run a full 12-month pilot, evaluate it, go back out for consultation, take it back to the board. So we really have lost that window of opportunity to do a meaningful pilot. So in a sense, we're needing to advance the decision about how to integrate on a more permanent basis the Sea Line Green line with the Crenshaw LAX line. So that's really the trigger that brought staff, back to engage with the board and stakeholders. That really is the key pivotal issue driving a lot of this. I'm going to skip now to a couple of the other factors that we would consider as we revisit the decision. Again, they're not really triggers. For instance, there's nothing preventing us from running the C3 option as the board directed us. It's going to be physically quite possible to do. It is the more expensive option out of the three main contenders that the board wrestled with when they took their decision. It requires more rail cars, more rail operators. As many of you are aware, recruiting transit operators right now is really challenging, to say the least. We're way behind on where we need to be in equipping Metro to run its full level of bus service, and anything that we take to start up rail is draining from our bus operator ranks, because currently our labour agreement requires that a rail operator come from the bus operator ranks. So again, these are not absolute issues, but they are worth considering as we go back to review the original decision. And it doesn't mean that we're limited to C1, C2 or C3 options. Not at all. We could consider other patterns, but they were at least the three main contenders from last time. Let me jump to more of the travel patterns discussion. Firstly, when we look at the Sea Line Green, the existing segment from Norwalk, a lot of the travel around that segment, and again, what you're seeing here is a map of overall travel, not just people who use transit, but all types of travel based on cell phone data that we collected some years back and analysed. And really, you can see the demand patterns for travel coming out of that wide area that wraps around the Sea Line Green segment from LAX to Norwalk really does kind of tightly wrap around that alignment. A little bit of leakage up towards the west side and downtown LA, a little bit of movement down south of the line towards Long Beach and other destinations to the south. But in general, it wraps fairly tightly around that. Not so much travel out to the west side. If I skip down one more slide, talk more of that same segment and how it relates for transit. Again, when you look at those little circles, that's an illustration of the ons and offs, and this is pre-COVID data for the green line as it is today, that end-to-end pattern from Norwalk to Redondo Beach. Again, when you look at those circles, the red is the number of boardings occurring, the blue is the number of alightings. As you move from Norwalk west, you can see that turnover starts to happen as you go along that line. particularly starting around Rosa Parks, Willowbrook Station. You see quite high volumes actually alighting from the train, and again, more people boarding. So there's a lot of turnover, which matches pretty well to what we saw on that travel pattern map on the previous slide. That sea line green is largely dominated by those ons and offs all the way along, including a huge number of alightings at the existing aviation LAX station, which we can presume the vast majority of people going to workplaces either in LAX itself or in that perimeter around LAX. You'll see the branch down to Redondo Beach, relatively lesser activity in its current form coming from that Norwalk end. So again, that's just to illustrate some of that pre-COVID condition on the sea line green.
Excuse me, Joe, this is Don Zerlip. Can you tell us which of those stations are the ones that can only handle 2 cars, not 3?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Don. I can reference that. Starting with LAX Aviation Station, just to the east of the junction. That is the first station in that condition. Then I believe the other 3 are on the branch down to Redondo Beach.
The other 4.
No, it's a total of 4 altogether. 3 are on the branch, and then Aviation LAX is the 4th.
Okay.
So again, this slide, I just clicked on that last button to bring up some of the connecting bus and rail lines that help explain why we see a lot of that turnover on the existing sea line green. You have that intercept with the blue line at Willowbrook Rosa Parks. You also have pretty big turnover at the silver line where that meets up with the sea line green. But not only there, also the Vermont corridor, quite a significant amount of alightings occurring there. And of course at Crenshaw and then at Hawthorne Lennox. And those are all still vibrant connections even today under COVID. Also looking at the Redondo Beach segment, your travel patterns coming out of the Redondo Beach segment are much more aligned north-south. You'll see there the darker shades being the more significant volumes of destinations coming out of locations on that segment, including the blue dot here of LAX itself. But again, quite a north-south alignment, not as much heading along the sea line green towards the Norwalk area. So again, these are travel demand, not just transit riders. So the last topic, of course, relates to future planning for our rail extensions, beginning with the Torrance extension. Again, we're hopeful of that early next decade. And then the following slide that I'll show you in a moment is the Crenshaw Northern. So again, how would we keep those in mind as we make our shorter term decision about how to integrate the operating plan with the existing sea line green and the new Crenshaw line? So again, the Torrance extension, just sharing some numbers there, it really does point to the Torrance branch becoming quite a strong branch with over 6,000 rides estimated in the 2042 planning year. So again, this is just the total boardings during the peak hour of the weekday. So it even outstrips the Norwalk volumes. So that's a substantial increase for that segment with the extension to Torrance. And again, as I mentioned, we have understudied the extension as a Measure M project in the outer years of Measure M, the extension up to Hollywood from the Expo line where the Crenshaw will terminate when we open it this year. So again, we're still looking at both the Torrance extension and the Crenshaw Northern extension and how those would be integrated into whatever operating plan we adopt for when Crenshaw is connected to the sea line green. And then, of course, as Don alluded to just a moment ago, we need to factor in any impacts from our decisions as to the need for 3-car trains and some other additional infrastructure. There were the platform expansions for the 3-car trains, but there were also some power substation issues that were value engineered out of the original Crenshaw project, and even out near Norwalk, there are some limitations with if we were to run very high frequent service out to that end of the line as well.
So at this point, you would not need to add the 3-car trains until you extended it up to Hollywood? Is that what that slide says?
Steve, yeah, the best available peak period load factors, at least for the Torrance extension, don't, at least at this point, show the need for the 3-car consist. I'm going to hold back from saying that the Crenshaw Northern does require them, because they're going back to do their modelling again, and they that project team did not want me to make any sort of definitive statements until they complete that work. So yeah, more to follow on that, but I would be very interested to see how that number comes out.
Because in 2020, that was one of the major issues, was do we need 3-car platforms in the El Segundo area? And if we go north, when would we need them going north? And
right.
I think what your slide says is we don't need them to open that direct 1-seat ride from Torrance to Expo, but we might need them if we go north of there. Is that
correct?
Fair?
At least based on that 2042 horizon year and the modeling efforts associated with that. That is correct.
I'm sorry, Joe. I thought that all of the stations being built along the Crenshaw line were 3-car trains. Is that true or not true?
No, absolutely right, Don. The Crenshaw line are fully equipped for the 3-car consist. What didn't occur was the full set of substations to support a very high frequent, like a 5-minute design criteria for a 3-car 5-minute frequency.
So the power isn't available for 3-car trains.
Correct. That is correct, Steve. That's where the limitation lies, at least at the higher frequencies, like 6-minute or 5-minute frequency.
I just want to observe that under the current proposed operating plan, the aviation station, which cannot handle 3-car trains, is going to be a major transfer point between the two lines operating. And it would seem to me to need that station to be, if we don't change the operating system, considered earlier maybe than some of the other stations were being retrofitted.
Yeah, I think we, in the Transit Operator Subcommittee, we discussed the need to take a look at the bus transfers at the Aviation Imperial Station and when those might change. Because right now there's a shuttle that goes into LAX from there and there's a lot of bus connections. But the operating plan moves that transfer point up to the LAX station up at 96th Street. And so we need to take a look at where those bus transfers are going to occur and where the rail patrons are either going to transfer to go north or south on the other line if we choose C2.
Correct. So just to wrap up the presentation, at least the recommendation that was provided to the board, Metro's board at their last meeting in April, was, to basically request permission from the board to conduct outreach to advise us on potential more permanent decision on the Crenshaw LAX lines integration with the Sea Line Green. So again, we did not ask the board to adopt a particular operating plan. We simply asked for the permission to conduct a relevant outreach program. That again passed on consent both at committee and at full board level. And again, we'd need to conduct that in the later part of this year in order to be back with the board early enough next year to adopt the plan in time for when we tie the Sea Line Green and the Crenshaw line together in the later part of 2023.
Recognizing that you're going out now to get input, prior to that, does staff have a considered recommendation, or would you rather not state anything like that?
In the board item, the staff would reaffirm the endorsement of the C2 alternative and request that Metro continue developing the 3-car platform extension projects, both the extension and the power upgrades.
I think it's also safe to say staff were cautioned by board not to take a position and to remain agnostic while presenting the technical background, as I've tried to do today. We do want people to be aware of some of the implications of the various options, But we were, cautioned to make sure, to give the outreach a fair chance for receiving everyone's input, that we don't go out in advance positioning for a recommendation. We can definitely give all the technical reasons why some options may be favorable to others. Absolutely. When you look at the extension, for the future lines, the Torrance extension and Crenshaw Northern, the C2 is quite attractive because it would create a north-south corridor that's very easily recognizable and understandable and usable. Matches well with the travel patterns for the western end of the line. But that is one consideration. Costs, again, C3 is a little expensive. So, that's, it's not so much necessarily a pure funding issue, but at least from availability of operator resources, that alone, certainly C3 is the tougher one to resource. But again, we're not taking any position at this stage. We'll let the outreach speak for itself, and then we'll pull together a recommendation, hopefully early next year, to take around to everyone and then present to the Metro Board.
All right, thank you, Joe. Joe, Don, one second.
I'm sorry.
Don, just one second. Joe, if do you want to pull off of your screen share, or do you want to keep this on with?
I can stop sharing if that's easier for the conversation. Yep.
What's easier for it? Does anyone have? I'd like to. It's harder for me to see everyone. So if you take off the screen share, it's easier for me to see hands raised. And then Don, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joe. When this was originally presented to the COG, Conan had created some animations to show how the trains would intersect, especially at the Y intersection was a clogging point. Have those animations been revised to see it? Obviously you tend to be leaning towards a C2 versus a C3. Do we know if that Y intersection will accommodate peak hour trains the way you would like without it becoming a real problem in the way it exists today?
I believe we do have those animations still. I mean, they were built based on the assumption of the 6-minute headway on all the patterns that we'd run. So those still stand, and those are certainly they were okay operationally. It does provide for a busy junction, but the modelling suggested it would be operationally reliable. So we do still have those available, Don, from the original work. Those would still stand. We may need to do more modelling of some other alternative rises to the level of interest that we think it warrants that.
I would hope that should staff eventually come back with a recommendation other than C3, that you would bring that modeling along, that visual comfort zone that could provide, I think would be significant.
Yep, happy to take that suggestion. That definitely would be happy to.
Chair, we've got a hand raised from Viviana.
Thanks, David.
Joe, you're still screen sharing by me, so I can't really see. So Viviana, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no worries. Just in case anybody wanted to reference a slide, but that's fine. We can take it down.
We got it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I know this is a touchy subject, and I wasn't here November of 2018, but from what I've heard, I know that there was a lot of consensus building with the Gateway Cities COG. Has the South Bay COG reached out at all, or is there anything in process to see, what the Gateway COG is looking at, or how they're feeling about this segment at all?
So we actually did reach out to the Gateway Cities COG. We asked Metro to reach out to the Gateway Cities COG, and I think they've done that. I'm pretty sure they've done it by now. I think the issue the consensus that was reached was for a 1-year pilot, and it was the C3 that was decided as the one that we would pursue at the time for this 1-year pilot. One of the things that was controversial was that there was a portion of our COG that was very supportive of a 1-seat ride from Torrance to Expo, and C3 doesn't give you that. And so looking at the green line, there was another part of our group, the majority, that said, let's be in consensus with the gateway cog, at least on the demo, because we're not going to open the entire line the whole in one segment. And it'll give us a chance to take a look at the pilot. Now we realize that there is no chance for a pilot. So we're being asked to take a look at what the permanent solution, permanent operating plan should be. And it's a controversy because we need to figure out whether in the South Bay, consensus with Gateway is more important than a one-seat ride from Torrance to Expo. I think that's the core of the controversy to me.
And Steve,
Is that
if I
fair?
may,
I was looking at Chris with his hand over his mouth, so I wondered if he thought that was a fair approximation of the issue.
I think that is it very succinctly. Joe, do you have any feedback on interaction with Gateway?
I can only speak to some of the earlier interaction we had before we went to the board in April. And again, reminder, I wasn't here either for the 2018 activities, but I believe a lot of emphasis was placed on preserving the direct rides from Willowbrook, Rosa Parks and points west of there around to Redondo Beach. At the time, there was quite a bit of ridership activity into the aerospace industry in that area. And there was a lot of emphasis placed on preserving that one-seat ride of the existing Sea Line Green. So I think Gateway's perspective may have shifted a little bit off that. I don't want to speak, for them entirely, but I think a lot more of their emphasis now was on the importance of connecting up, to LAX and beyond to the Expo line. So it would seem, more of the concern was, were they going to be missing out on a valuable connection for that link up to Expo?
Yeah, there was no APM at the time. There was no people mover out of the airport. And so this is all new information as to whether the airport is the appropriate place for us to connect and which line should connect and which line should get the one-seat ride. And so it's the South Bay and the Gateway may not be in consensus ultimately, but if we pick C3, we would be, and we pick C2, we would not be.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
And Joe,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One second. I just want to put a small pin in that, Joe. I would like, if we have someone from Redondo as well, we can speak to some of the aerospace considerations when we go to speak around here. But Viviana, you could continue with your questioning, please.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So just to clarify, have you all met with the Gateway Cities COG since?
We have not met with them since the April board action. That only occurred a couple of weeks ago, but we will be arranging a follow-up with them. I'm sure it will be one of many follow-ups with them. So we've had one session, but it was pre the board action.
Yeah, one of the reasons for the board action was to make sure that this outreach was done and that the staff from Metro bring it neutrally, so that we could get the input from all the different sides. And that process is just beginning with today's meeting. Actually, I think it's the first meeting.
Correct. You're absolutely the first to receive a follow-up action. Correct.
Great. Okay. I look forward to, more collaboration on this. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
But we get to go first. That means we get to frame the debate. Fantastic. Lily, your hand was raised from Supervisor in 2, Supervisor Mitchell.
Yeah, I was not around in 2018 either. So this is like starting fresh for some of us. I imagine there wasn't good cell phone data analysis of travel behavior in 2018, since I think Metro just got the street lighting contract shortly after that decision.
It actually wasn't based on the street lighting data set. This was a different data set. We worked with Cambridge Systematics and procured a whole batch of cell phone data completely, in a separate effort, not the one through search through Streetlight.
Okay.
But
did we have travel behavior data in 2018?
Yes, it was available at that point.
Okay, and what can we say has changed in travel behavior since 2018, given, the Rose Parks Willowbrook station is totally redone? I mean, this entire, almost all of this segment, with the exception of the easternmost portion of the Green Line, is within SD2, and it's a you know, from our office's perspective, we're really going to be interested in understanding the travel behavior and the equity analysis that underpins the travel behavior analysis, right? Like, where are people who rely on Metro trying to go, and, you know, what option is going to give them the best access to job centers? And in our minds, you know, 60% of the people who work at LAX come from the second district. It's our understanding that many use the Green Line already for getting to work. And so I think, you know, that is part of our analysis, just to tell the rest of the board. But what can you say about what's changed, given that the state of our network is not fixed from 2018 to 2022? There have been some investments already, you know?
Yeah, I would say the biggest change is in volume more so than patterns of travel. And certainly the service worker jobs, you know, are more actively traveling compared to the office work jobs, which really haven't rebounded. And my understanding was some component, at least of the aerospace jobs, was more in the office side than the service worker side. So I'm, you know, confident if we redid the numbers, we would see perhaps a lesser demand going all the way around to the Redondo Beach leg of the line, but the LAX connection being a bit more robust compared to its previous numbers.
Okay, so LAX from, let's say, Willowbrook, Rosa Parks, or Lakewood, still fairly robust. And then of what we're seeing from, let's say, Redondo Beach, we're seeing mostly just a sort of northern.
Right.
Right, okay.
Yes, typically we see you know, people traveling relatively shorter distances and then connecting to north-south buses in the LAX area or Crenshaw or one of those other early corridors. Yeah, they don't typically go a long way to the east.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, the predominant move from the Green Line is still to LAX. And the predominant move from the Torrance would be LAX and then on to Expo, to either go to Santa Monica or downtown. Whereas the Green Line, if they're going to downtown, would not come all the way out to the South Bay to go back downtown. So if you look at the volumes on the east end of the Green Line has a lot of people going to Rosa Parks and North, a lot of people going on the Silver Line, going up Vermont before they get to the west side at all. So we're trading off a different kind of ridership priority. Who gets the one seat ride is the question, and who has to transfer, and whether the LAX is a better place to transfer than the current Imperial and Imperial station on the Green Line.
Correct. And just for everybody's reference, we can do the scheduling so that we can create a very timed transfer, minimal amount of time between the two trains at the AMC. If we didn't send one of the lines north of AMC, there would be, you know, a very well coordinated schedule, so they'd have minimal wait time, you know, something in the order of 3-minute connection time at AMC station before proceeding north on their connecting train, and the same coming back as well. So we have a good ability to at least optimize those connections. No problem at all with achieving that.
It surprised me that the north-south line from Torrance to the Expo line exceeded the ridership on the Green Line to the airport and north. So I was surprised by that. That's different than data we had in 2018.
Say that one more time, Steve. What was that observation?
The observation was by having a one-seat ride from Torrance up to Expo, it exceeded the ridership on the Green Line. And that surprised me because we were always kind of a stub, and whether the stub would go over to Rosa Parks and force a transfer there, or whether the stub would be at Aviation and force buses or transfer there, it just wasn't treated the same way in the prior analysis, and the ridership by the one-seat ride shifted from being the Green Line to the El Segundo employment area to being everybody wants to get to LAX. And a one-seat ride from Norwalk to LAX is not an insignificant one-seat ride, whereas the ride from Torrance all the way to Expo is a brand new ride. Does that help you? Okay.
And certainly, you know, the big issue with C3 was the Redondo Beach portion did not enjoy that one-seat ride to AMC. That was one of the notable, you know, weak points of the C3 option. It really did prioritize preserving the existing C line.
And that since there was no AMC, transferring to a bus at Aviation and Imperial was no less favorable. Now that we are going to have the AMC, that bus transfer is not as favorable as going straight into the airport terminals on the AMC.
Correct.
And Steve, I will somewhat echo that with a very El Segundo perspective on it, is the prospect of Aviation and Imperial no longer being choked by airport employee transit, people who park there and shuttle into the airport. We think there's a remarkable opportunity for that to sort of revitalize the use of that station for people who do want to continue to go downtown, who would bike or ride there and do a park and ride to go points east and join the Silver Line. It's something that is just logistically not feasible currently because of the usage by LAX employees. I would also say something that's changed from the last data set. It is something that's changed since the last data set was collected, is the manufacturing patterns along the aerospace industry. And that's just because of the different platforms that the government has purchased, seeing production shift to the desert on some of those flight platforms, B-21 going to the desert, the reduction on the F-18 lines and next generation strike fighter we think is likely to be manufactured in the desert. That has changed the employment pattern of people we see coming westbound on Norwalk, and we see it in our daytime population here in El Segundo. I don't know if we have anyone from Redondo who can speak to how it's affected North Redondo or the movement or completion of the Webb satellite telescope, if that's changed things. But those things have a real impact on ridership because of the thousands of employees who service. So that's a very El Segundo observation, but my contribution from the chair. And with that, who else has further discussion? Or I was just so robust and my dulcet and euphonious tones soothed the masses. Well, I will, but we owe a recommendation to our board on this. And I suspect, David, I would ask you, do you require two things of us? One, an endorsement of one of the three operating plans, and a second endorsement of a car structure and electrification? Are those to be handled in two things, or are we just going to select one of the three operating plans that we support?
And the question is, are we going to the steering committee or are we going to the board? If we're going to act this month and give some feedback this month, we'd go to the steering committee, because the Metro could take action before we had an opportunity to take it to the full board. If Metro's not going to take action this month, then we still have time to take it to the full board rather than the steering committee.
And I can speak to the Metro actions. The only thing we're authorized is to start the preparations for the outreach. So it will be many months before we'll be back to state any recommendation. So you from, at least from my perspective, you would have time. The other thing is I would hope, you know, not to see early action for the reason that Gateway COG may perceive that Metro's out doing deals again, which is not why I'm here today. I am here just to let you all know that the outreach process is approved, and we look forward to conducting that. So might be good to keep that in mind, that you know, we would, you know, at least from a staff perspective at Metro, we're agnostic. We're not looking for, you know, anybody to support a recommendation. We don't know from the outreach, there may be something different come out of that you know, you all might like the look of when the time comes. So yeah, that's just a little perspective from staff here.
When do you need your decision by?
Joe,
Joe, when do you need your decision by?
Our expectation would be we'd be touching with Metro's board early next year. So we would reconnect with the COGs before that happens. So I think it's more in the later part of this year that the COGs would be well timed to take some you know, position, if I can call it that.
Okay. So this is
Can
almost.
I just add, my boss in committee, or can't actually remember if it was a staff request or if it was follow-up from my boss specifically, but we asked for more information from Metro. And so I don't know that if we take a decision on a position today, but our office would have to abstain on that just because we're still asking for more information from Metro staff on this specifically. So I want to put that out there, and also just, you know, in terms of Supervisor Hahn's office requests to understand that the communication to all of the stakeholders, not just the COGs, right? There are a number of stakeholders that are implicated in a change like this. Would just want to make sure that this body has all of that information before we vote on an alternative, because there is a difference between alternative 1 and 2, and I don't know that between even those two options I yet have clarity on what is the best. I think I'm leaning somewhere, but we've asked for more information. So I just want to urge us to not make that decision today because we would have to abstain.
So our alternatives here are take a decision. One moment, Don, just to make sure everyone is caught up on our sort of choices. Is we can proceed down an early decision, which is our and then reserve the right to change that as more information comes to light, or we can take this as a receive and file, which would be a massive letdown from our 90 days of build up to this. But we just want to keep us all abreast of where we are. Don, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I just want to give some past perspective for Lily and her office. There was great discussion when this was brought forward in the past about ultimately having these 2 lines become actually 3 service lines. One that would go, or 2 that would be exactly as we see them now in option C2, where there's a direct connection between Torrance and the Expo line, and the direct connection from the far east of the Green line all the way up to the Expo line.
Hey Don, I'm sorry to cut you off. I have a very hard stop at T-4 minutes ago, and I do have quite a bit of the history, even though our office wasn't here. So we totally understand what the decision is.
Robert's Rules of Orders here. Lily, one moment, please. But Don has the cog here. On our Lord of the Flies, he has the conch shell, so he's got to finish.
Thank you, Chris. And finally, there was a 3rd operating system that would go from the end of the Green line all the way down to Torrance. There was discussion at that point about C1 and that orphan line for Redondo Beach. Actually, you can do that same trip in a car faster than you can on the rail, and it didn't seem to be really satisfying much. I think that as you look at this going forward, that C2 option now becomes more attractive because it would put in 2 of the 3, hopefully long-term operating systems. That's all I have. Thank you, Chris.
Lily, go right ahead. The floor is yours if you are still here. I hope you can leave.
You had to go.
Well, with that said, so our options here, we can receive and file and allow Joe and the outreach team to continue to go and I guess prepare people that an outreach is coming to begin of this. Oh, sorry, Viviana, your hand is raised.
Oh, no, Chris, thank you. Just again, wanted to echo what Lily said. I would also really like to see some sort of collaboration between this COG and Gateway Cities COG. So if we can, if I could ask that we receive and file this, I would appreciate that. So thank you.
That would be a substitute motion. if that's what you're doing.
We actually didn't even have a motion on the floor yet. So
we have no motions. That is, in fact, we have a motion to receive and file in lieu of taking a position. But do we no longer have a quorum as Lily has left?
no, we do. We've got you.
We do.
Oh, it is.
I thought Mayor Butts was here for
Olivia might have hopped off though. El Segundo, SD4, and Mayor Butts is not here anymore either.
without a quorum, can you simply table this for future discussion?
That probably would be appropriate.
We will be compelled to do so if the Sergeant at Arms cannot summon back our delegates. Well, with that said, if there is, we cannot take a motion, so we're obligated to postpone. David, do you have a recommendation about how far we should postpone this? Because if we think that Joe is unlikely that the board will not be moving until the new year. Joe, do you know when you were slated to present to Gateway?
Don't have any exact time frame on that. I mean, we give them a courtesy update just as we've done for this call today. I'm sure that will be taken care of in the coming couple of weeks. But the purpose of today, we would just extend them that same courtesy. There wouldn't be any other follow-up with either COG until we were at the other end of the outreach process with our report back on that. But we can
David,
obviously come back and meet with you next month if you need our attendance while you take a vote.
Given the timeline, Joe, wouldn't you say that it would be better to come back for more of a formal outreach and presentation, say end of summer, early fall?
Oh yeah, we would absolutely. Sorry, I did skip over that. We would give you the same outreach presentation as well once we've shaped that material.
And once you've come back with a recommendation, I think that's really the next step
Right.
for us to.
Right. So we'd have at least one interim visit with you, and then the final one when we come back to share some sort of recommendation. Yeah.
So if there's
So why don't we do that? Why don't we put for Monday, September 12th?
And we will be in touch with staff to figure out if that's still, as things change and as our schedule at Metro.
Yeah, let's talk about September 12th, and then let's talk about when we get closer, whether that's to consider a recommendation or just to have a receive and file update.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense, Chris?
We'll keep an eye out and see if there's a blitz of other recommendations suddenly being made through the summer to make sure that we haven't lost our first mover advantage. But let's plan for September 12th, and there will be no vote on this as we lack a quorum.
And we can keep it on the agenda just for updates each month, just to keep you guys aware.
It'll carry over.
Yeah,
that's fine with me.
And we will make sure the Sergeant at Arms gets an early lunch next time so we can wrangle our delegates. We don't lose our quorum. They're hiding in a hotel room in Pahrump. They don't have to vote on this. Joe, thank you very much for this. And we will carry this on the agenda and look for September 12th to be the official, this time we're really going to vote on a day. Longest contentious item ever. All right, with that, did Sergio, was he able to join?
No, he was not able to.
Okay, then we will go ahead. We will just carry it. Well, actually, we won't even carry it. We'll just receive it next time. Again, to David for your plan. If there's notable updates, please send those out midweek.
Will do.
And then, Steve, this will go to, I guess we're back to attachment E, or down to attachment E, our 3-month look ahead.
Just that we'll be keeping track of Metro's continuing concerns with their budget. They are facing a shortfall, and we need to keep track of that. I think that's it, other than the normal updates from the working groups.
All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any announcements or anyone going around to the board? Anyone receiving the committee?
The only thing
is
at the steering committee tomorrow, we'll be taking that amended recommendation for Palos Verdes Estates. So hopefully we get a quorum at that meeting.
That'll be at the board meeting at the end of the month.
You're sure?
Mm-hmm.
I thought we needed to do it now.
No, they're
okay.
Fine with
Never mind. I take it back.
Well, very well. I'll thank you very much for joining. We are out significantly early, so no burnt toast and coffee for noon. You can actually go get put creamer in it. Thank you all very, very much. We are on next month. We do not have a summer adjournment. Is that correct, David?
We don't have an official one. We usually do go dark once during the summer, kind of depending on
what's cooking,
what's on the agendas. If you have a preference, we can.
Hey, Mark.
No. I just want to make sure that we're on for June 13th. Go ahead, Steve.
Mark Dirking, when is Metro dark in the summer?
Oh, I forget. I think we're dark in August, aren't we?
I think that was it. Usually it was July, but I think they went to August.
August.
They're dark in July.
Is
Yeah.
that-
Oh, dark in July, yes. The Board of
Yeah.
Supervisors is dark in August, yes.
Okay, so we'll take a look at whether we'll be dark in August also, Chris.
Metro is dark in July.
Right.
Okay.
And we would take a look at whether our committee would be dark in July as well, if there's nothing of other impact.
That all depends on what my wife has planned for vacation. And then I'll ask her. She's
We'll check with you.
Darth, whatever Darth Sidious has decreed. Will. Thank you all very much. Have a good rest of your Monday and a good rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
We are
Bye.
adjourned.